Hey there, YouTube. What's up? That's what the kids tell me to say. I think this is going to be the most complicated show that I've ever put together. Probably too complicated. And I should have rehearsed it, but I don't have time. What could possibly go wrong? It's also going to be a really great show. And yes, that is an inside joke for those of you who have listened to some previous episode where I made fun of that. Away we go. From the studio in the bonus room above the garage on the north side of Cary, at the very foot of Mount Belzoni, this is the Triangle Talk Show. It is episode 57. Is it 57? I think, no, it's episode 58. Look at the title there, Gary. My script says 57. Boyz the Hoodz. I'll explain in a minute. But this may qualify as a clickbait episode, so out of an abundance of caution, as soon as the music's done, I'm going to hit the clickbait klaxon. Just in case. So for sure, it's an activist episode. It's also a political episode. Got elements of both. It is April 1st. No, it's April 2nd. It is May 2nd. Wait. Yes, I should have rehearsed. It is May 2nd. I didn't update my script. I was expecting to be doing this show yesterday, and producing it took too long. So it's May 2nd. My script said May 1st. Jeez. I'm Gary Pierce. No, forget that. I don't know who I am. You don't know who I am. I'm the antique activist wannabe. And in this episode, I'm going to show you just how much I am a wannabe, not a real activist. The Triangle Talk Show is a podcast and a YouTube show. It's for the Triangle area of North Carolina. That is Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill. Those are most often considered to be the 3 points of the triangle. And I got to add Cary, because now Cary is way bigger than Chapel Hill. Still doesn't get to be a point of the triangle, because that would make a very awkward looking triangle. And there's a bunch of other towns, big and small, around the area. You're all part of it. You can watch or listen from anywhere. We cover anything we want to, with a pretty significant lean to the left, with a lot of progressive politics, but it's not all politics. Our website is triangletalkshow.com. Got a Facebook group. It's also named Triangle Talk Show. We occasionally screech something out on Twitter, and there we are at Talk Triangle, because I didn't know how to run the Twitter machine when I signed up for it. And on YouTube, we are ashamed to admit that we haven't hit the 100 subscriber mark yet that will let us claim the Triangle Talk Show URL. That would be youtube.com/Triangle Talk Show. We're not there yet. It's a complicated bit of gibberish. So for now, just go to the website, click on the YouTube link, and then please subscribe. When we get to 100, we can do that custom URL thing. You know, I've never done a full boilerplate description of the show like that at the beginning. I just usually launch into the show. But once in a while, I guess I should. Okay, first, this is approximately the 1-year anniversary of the Triangle Talk Show. Woohoo! I need one of those little horn things you blow. The actual anniversary date's a little bit ambiguous, I suppose. On April 23rd, last year, I recorded episode 0, and I said at the time it was just a test because I needed a file. I needed an audio file to send to iTunes so they would officially register the podcast. Somehow, I still talked for a half an hour. I have no idea what I talked about. I don't remember. You can go over there to YouTube and play it back. The official episode 1, titled The Little Picture, hit the web on April 27th of last year. So that's probably the best anniversary date. So we're a little bit late. It's also probably the worst anniversary date because it's just 2 days away from Cindy and my wedding anniversary, which means that I'm going to be off doing something else that day fairly often, assuming this thing goes more than another year or so. You won't be seeing centennial anniversary episodes on the actual date very often because I'll be doing other stuff. Like, for example, this year on that date, that was last Thursday, I was in downtown Raleigh. I was recording a little press conference and interviewing the 2 guys who got arrested for allegedly putting Klan hoods on one of the Confederate statues down on the Capitol grounds. So that's your clue to the title of the show. Remember that? Boyz and the Hoodz. And then I was gone for the weekend for Cindy and my anniversary celebration. Not the Triangle Talk Show, Cindy and me. We went down to Charlotte to visit her folks. They also have an anniversary. They did last week. It's a couple days away from ours. And on the way back, we had a little bit of excitement. We were going through Siler City on US 64. Cindy was driving. She's got a dash cam. This is her dash cam video. You're listening to sound from a podcast from the Twit Network, a technical podcast. And so we're heading into Siler City. I got some video on here that just gives you the feel for driving into Siler City. We're in the left-hand lane, coming into town, and coming into the business district area along 64. And look, see that pickup truck coming up there? Looks like he's going to pull into our lane, and then at the last minute he doesn't. And then that car also looked like it was going to pull into our lane, and it did! And that's Cindy reacting. Okay, so that went by pretty fast. Let me back up and play it again, maybe a little bit slower motion. Okay, there's a white pickup truck. He looks like he's going to swing wide into the left lane, but at the very last minute he sees us and pulls back in. But there's the black Audi, and it is coming into our lane. Is it going to swing back? No, it doesn't care. It's coming. It kind of doesn't look like it until the very end, and you see, no, it's going into our lane. So I think I got one more shot at that. Yeah, definitely going into our lane. Cindy skirts over into the suicide lane. Fortunately, nobody's coming, and avoids creaming probably what was an expensive Audi. So good job, Cindy. By the way, Cindy actually put an expletive or two into that, and I expertly edited it out. Let's see what's I got to do a little bit of manipulating here, and then we'll be right back to the show. Okay, so that was fun. On Monday, this is Thursday as I'm recording this. I was really aiming to get this podcast out a long time ago. On Monday, I went to see Avengers Endgame, that big movie everybody's talking about. It was awesome. It just opened last weekend. I usually wait a little longer to go see a blockbuster movie like that. Wait till the crowds die down a little bit. I think it was on every screen in every theater in the country. A new version of it at every theater was starting about every 10 minutes. And over the weekend, if it wasn't sold out, you might get a seat in the front row, looking up at the screen at a 45-degree angle. Faces 40 feet tall. I'm retired. Yay for me. I can go at 11 o'clock in the morning on a Monday. So I blew off doing this episode on Monday and went to the movie. It wasn't sold out on Monday at 11 o'clock. Theater was maybe half full, maybe 2/3. I signed up early enough with reserved seating. I got a seat in the best row, right in the middle. That's at the Regal at Briar Creek, the Briar Creek Shopping Center. That's up along US 70 and just west of 540. I like doing a local podcast. I can make local references. People understand them. At that movie theater, you can reserve seats. Every seat is a lazy boy recliner. Did anybody mention this is a 3-hour movie? Yeah. So it's a great theater to go to. This episode of the Triangle Talk Show is brought to you by the Regal Theater at the Briar Creek Shopping Center and by Lazy Boy. Okay, so I'm in a reserve seat in the best row, and usually during the week, there's nobody sitting next to me. I get both armrests all to myself. This time, the row is full. So it is busy. It's a Monday. It's 11 o'clock, but it's pretty full. So I'm sitting there with people on both sides. My arms are a little bit scrunched in, kind of half sharing an armrest with a total stranger. Worse than a total stranger, another comic book movie geek who's got time off in the middle of a weekday to go see a movie. Yes, my life is hell. I'm also worried that the movie might be a little overhyped. A little. Too often, that means that I'm disappointed. Movies got great reviews. Everyone's saying you got to go, and I go see it. And then, it's okay, but didn't live up to the hype. Black Panther is a movie that was kind of overhyped, and I really didn't fall in love with that movie until the third or fourth time I watched it. Okay, maybe the second time. All right, anyway, I usually wait a week or two, and I usually don't worry too much about spoilers. I don't care that much. If I hear something that tells me what's going to go on in the movie, I don't really care. It doesn't bother me that much. But Endgame was different. It's important to go into that movie not knowing what's going to happen. And the spoiler-filled reviews were starting to hit, so I knew I had to go see it quick. And so I blew off producing this episode on Monday. Endgame, by the way, was awesome. There was a wire service review in the News and Observer. It was tepid. It was a 2-star review. Came from the Tribune Wire Service. It was almost the only bad review the movie got. The Rotten Tomatoes critic score was 95%. The audience score, 91%. I loved every minute of the whole 3 hours. Okay, comic book movies are usually my favorites. I'll go to other kinds of movies, but the wham bam blow 'em up comic book movies are pretty much, the ones I'm going to guarantee to go to see. But over the years, I've become a little jaded by the monster battles that all come out of a computer's render farm. It's just pixels battling pixels with loud explosions. On the other side of the coin, the DC superhero TV shows on the CW network, Arrow, Flash, Supergirl, and they got a couple of others. They don't have much action at all. What they do have is a lot of angst. The heroes are always fretting about their lives, their decisions, their future. They're really superhero soap operas. So the non-spoiler review going into Endgame was that it was going to start slow with the characters reacting to how that half-second snap of the fingers that finished off Infinity War, Thanos wiped out half the population of the universe, people, and all living things, animals, flowers, insects, I guess. Okay, so that's how Infinity War ended. And then there's Endgame. And the first hour is slow. It is the characters reacting to that snap and how it affected their lives. So, oh no, more angst, right? Well, attention CW writers. You writers for Supergirl and Flash and Arrow, go watch Endgame and learn how to write about feelings. Please. They did it well. Even when the action picked up, well, it was different. I kept thinking to myself, this is so much more than a comic book movie. They did it. They beat the hype. They exceeded expectations. Well, my expectations at least. And from what I read, a lot of other people's. So now, excuse me while I go cancel my News and Observer subscription. Which, by the way, it sort of canceled itself last week. I went to download my PDF copy of the paper. I read it on a tablet, Samsung tablet, but I get the PDF version that looks just like the real newspaper because I'm old and I'm willing to compromise that far in new technology, but I want something that looks like the real newspaper. And then I'll go look at the web for other stuff. So I went to download that, and it said something like my subscription had expired. And I had just renewed a couple of weeks earlier. I had the receipts. That's what the kids say. I had the receipts. So I called, and they fixed it real quick. And the lady that I talked to said something about how the production side and the business side of the News and Observer were on two different computer systems, and they didn't always talk to each other very well. Oh, News and Observer, we need you. I don't know. Moving on. Tuesday, the North Carolina Senate scheduled its vote to override Governor Cooper's veto of the Born Alive anti-abortion bill, Senate Bill 359. Spoiler alert, they did vote to override the veto. The House is going to have to vote to override the veto before it is really overridden. That's not scheduled yet. It may be a last-minute vote. They may try to keep it secret. I mean, there's Democrats in the House. They won't let it stay secret, but you might not have much time if you wanted to be there or learn about it. So it could be a last-minute vote. I went down to the legislature and I recorded the Senate. It was a short debate and the vote, and that's going to be later on in this show. So even though I didn't put it in the title, we're going to see the Senate do that veto override. Yesterday was the Teachers March on Raleigh. I thought about going downtown for that, but, enough is enough. The march is getting plenty of coverage. Yesterday I worked on putting this episode together all day long. Still didn't get done. Still got slopped over in today before I could sit here and record. Okay, so let's get down to business for this episode. First, we're going to check on the two Boyz the Hoodz title. Boyz the Hoodz. Okay, we're going to do that. Then we'll check that Senate override. And then finally, as long as I was downtown Tuesday, and it was a really nice evening, I decided to go really look for the first time since I moved here almost 30 years ago at those monuments on the Capitol Square. So that will round out this episode. It's going to take a while. It's going to be a long one. But it's worth going through at whatever pace you can, because it's going to be a while before I'm able to put together the next episode. It's going to be another busy week next week for me. So no Triangle Talk shows next week. Okay, so I came up with a title for this episode, Boyz in the Hoodz. Oh, it was supposed to be Two Boyz in the Hoodz. I screwed up. Think Two Boyz in the Hoodz. For those of you listening, you're kind of all set. For those of you watching, think Two Boyz in the Hoodz. And once again, it's potential clickbait. Thank you. So I came up with that because this story is about two young men who got arrested a couple of weeks ago for allegedly putting Klan hoods on the Women of the Confederacy statue downtown at the Capitol. And that reminded me of the title from a movie in the early 90s called Boyz in the Hood. And now I got two boys here, and it's not. It's Boyz in the Hood. It's a movie about gangs in Los Angeles. It's a movie I'd never seen, but the title was iconic. I certainly heard about it. So when I first wrote out about this title, I used the apostrophe N that the movie did. Now, an apostrophe N can mean in, I-N, or I think it can also mean and, A-N-D. But I decided that was too ambiguous, so I decided to change this episode title to use the ampersand. And I always thought that the ampersand had sort of an n sound, like news and observer, because it's got the ampersand there. Well, I looked it up, and apparently it's pronounced and. So whenever you see an ampersand, it's just a quick way to write the word and. I hate the English language. Okay, I'd never seen the movie Boyz in the Hood. I really didn't know much about it except the title, and now I'm planning to play off of it for this episode. And suddenly, the movie's in the news. The director, John Singleton, had just died at the age of 51, a young guy, died of a stroke, and so the movie's getting some renewed attention. New York Times, an op-ed writer, his name is Touré, just one name, Touré. He's also the host of the Touré Show podcast, which I've never heard, probably never will. But he wrote this. A large part of Boyz is about the efforts of the main character, that's Cuba Gooding Jr.'s Tree Styles, to lose his virginity, and the efforts of his best friend, Morris Chestnut's Ricky Baker, to do well on the SAT and get into the University of Southern California. They must do this while also surviving in one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the country, South Central Los Angeles, which the film depicts as a place where violence is ubiquitous, police helicopters hang overhead, almost everyone owns a gun, the Crips prowl the streets day and night just looking for someone to kill. It's as if the sweet internal exploration of Ferris Bueller's Day Off and all those big questions about who am I becoming were taking place in the middle of the Hunger Games. I think the Hunger Games had a little bit of that in it too. All right. So that's what he said about Boyz in the Hood. So for my episode, appropriate, maybe not entirely inappropriate. Our boys and their hoods are Enzo Niebuhr and Jody Anderson. They're part of a local group called Smash Racism Raleigh. So no hidden agendas there. They got a Facebook page. Let's see, I wasn't really prepared to show the Facebook page, but let me see if I can make that happen. Yeah. That's their Facebook page. Again, no hidden agendas here either. Interestingly, it is facebook.com/crush Confederates. So, well, maybe no hidden agendas. Also, no clear decision about what we're going to be. So Enzo and Jody were arrested April 21st. They were charged with defacing a public monument and disorderly conduct. And someone from their group recorded some video of it.
Hey, hey, ho, ho, these racist statues got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, these racist statues got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, these racist statues got to go.
So there's a close look at the hoods. I'm going to say not very Klan hood-like. I mean, it's not the dunce cap we're used to seeing, just kind of like napkins draped over there. And so there's a cop who's trying to pull him off. He's got his baton. He pulled one off. He can't reach the other. And there's this guy in a jacket, a bow tie, and pink pants helping him. And I don't know who that is. They think he's a well-known white supremacist, but they kind of suspecting that. Okay, so the cop finally gets the two napkins off of the head of the statue, and Enzo and Jody are arrested for defacing the public monument and disorderly conduct. So now we're going to go back to last Thursday, and pardon me once again. I gotta do a little bit of homework here. Going to go back to last Thursday, and they called a press conference from their Smash Racism group they called a press conference in Nash Square. Now, I don't know if any other media covered it. There were no TV stations there. There were a few other people there. Maybe, you could say just a handful of radicals. And, the only reason they got any attention at all is because they posted their own video of them getting arrested for putting the Klan hoods on that monument. I saw the story in the News and Observer. That's not the first time that's ever been done. So it caught my attention, and I saw the press conference announcement, and I checked out their Facebook page. And then I asked if I could talk to them on camera afterwards, and they said, maybe. So I went. It's something I can do once in a while. Nobody else in town does this sort of thing, so I thought, okay, I will go. Got there a few minutes late, and Jody was already talking. That's Jody there. I'll play you the whole thing. It runs about 10 minutes, and afterwards, I did get to talk to them on camera, so we'll see that. You can use your fast forward button if you want, or maybe listen to everything. So here is Jody. Again, I got there late. It's already in progress, and I'm now very concerned because I'm not hearing any sound from this video. Again, I should have rehearsed it, but could be there's no sound. And if that's the case, I've rendered these things this morning, and I didn't check them. Let me see if I got sound on the next one. If I don't, I'm going to have to call a halt to the proceedings. No, I got sound on that. So, where's my sound? There is no sound. Well, I had something screwed up. Okay, so they did a press conference. It was kind of, radicals talking about stuff going on, take the statues down, things like that. There's no way that I can summarize what they were talking about. What I would say is that they knew what they were talking about. They'd done their homework. They had a pretty good idea of what it was they wanted to what they wanted to say. I'm disappointed that I screwed up the audio on that, especially for you audio audience. It wasn't just Jody and Enzo. It was a couple other folks who were talking, and I think the one thing that may be sort of important to see, if I can find it, is a spot where I pan toward who else is actually there. Because just a handful of folks. Don't even think anybody from the Independent was there, but I hadn't checked the Independent recently to see. There we go. There's their handful of people. Okay, so they finished that, and then they were happy to talk to me. Again, they were arrested for defacing that monument and putting the napkins on top of it. It was pretty easy to remove. There was no spray paint or anything like that. And disorderly conduct, which is, a good catch-all for making someone stop saying or doing something you don't want them to say or do if you are in authority. So they couldn't talk about the incident in detail. I'm going to keep saying they allegedly put the napkins on top of the monument because I don't have video of them doing that. I don't know if anybody does. When I went down there, I didn't look around for security cameras. I bet there are security cameras already all around there. Okay, so I was more interested anyway in getting to know who they were and how they ended up doing the things that they do. And we had to hurry because there were some wicked thunderstorms brewing around the area. And my camera is A, expensive, and B, not at all waterproof. So, standing around inside a park with a thunderstorm coming is not great. It's not the best environment for an in-depth discussion of backgrounds and issues and motivations. So, well, we got this, and, make of it what you will. Here's the interview, and then remember coming up in a minute will be the Senate thing. So get the camera going. See if we get lucky and we don't get too rained on. Yeah, I hope not. Who are you guys?
My name is Enzo and Jody. I'm with Smash Racism Raleigh.
My name is Jody Anderson, also with Smash Racism Raleigh.
What is Smash Racism Raleigh?
We're a coalition of anti-racist activists here in Raleigh. Primarily, we've been organizing around getting the Confederate statues down at the state capitol grounds. We had our first free protest this last December following the toppling of Silent Sam at UNC. Some of us were around during the Durham statue trials, which thankfully ended with no one being convicted in that. So we're sort of trying to bring that anti-racist activism and energy here to Raleigh, where we have the most high-profile Confederate monuments in the state. It's a massive monument to the veterans of the Confederacy, and there's 3 other smaller ones. So that's sort of what we've been focusing around, as well as police accountability with all of these recent police deaths in Charlotte, in Durham, here in Raleigh. I believe there was another one in the Triangle in Apex that came out today. So it's a lot.
How old are you guys?
I'm 18.
I'm 22.
And are you North Carolina natives? How long have you been here?
I've been here for quite a bit. I used to live in Charlotte, and I moved up to Raleigh for school.
I've been out in the Asheville area since I was about 4, I think.
Feel a drop of rain. So we can't say you ain't from around here.
No, we've been here. I've been here since 2006, so I can't even remember any other place except North Carolina.
How'd you decide this is what you wanted to do? There's so many different causes to go after.
Well, probably all of the energy around it over at UNC and Durham is probably what inspired us to focus on it, because of the energy and the momentum behind it. We're, of course, involved in all of these other struggles around economic inequality, around police accountability. So it's not solely just these Confederate statues that we've been trying to organize around, but it's sort of what's caught media attention recently.
Is that what you did?
Yeah, I would say it's something pretty similar. I mean, it's like all of the issues interconnect, sort of. So it's this is something that's really, we think we can build a movement around in this area right now because of what's been going on in Durham, what's been going on in Chapel Hill. So yeah, but it ties into all of the other issues with economic inequality, imperialism, and all of that.
So you started a group, Smash Racism?
Yeah, so Smash Racism Raleigh, it's really just a coalition of anti-racist activists in the area. So it's a bunch of folks from a bunch of other different organizations across the Wake County area. Some folks have gotten involved from Durham area, but mostly just Wake County residents.
You guys got arrested the other day?
Yes, so...
And you can't say much about that.
No, we cannot, but this past Sunday we were arrested by the state capitol police for allegedly putting cloth on top of one of the monuments and allegedly repeating anti-racist chants. Again...
Somebody did that because you got video of it.
Right. Well, what we have to say to that is fighting white supremacy is not a crime. We take that from Durham, as that was the chant around the Durham statue trials, and we will repeat it. Fighting white supremacy is not a crime, and it was an unjust arrest.
All right. There's obviously a real long history of civil disobedience. You guys familiar with that? Studied it long before you were born?
Yeah, North Carolina has a rich history of civil disobedience, like the Greensboro Five, for example. We're here in North Carolina. The World War sit-in is where it started. So North Carolina is pretty center in the civil rights struggle. Many people tend to forget about that. And civil disobedience has a really large part in shaping politics, especially in the South, when these often racist legislatures don't listen to anything else.
Are you familiar with what happens once you've been arrested and things like this?
I'm familiar, yes.
What do you expect to happen?
Well, what had happened is they took us for processing. We had to post bond.
You got a court date?
Yeah, we have a court date on May 21st. It'll be a first appearance, unlikely to go into trial. They're going to ask us, are we going to use a public lawyer or not? So.
Okay, and you're willing to take whatever gets handed out?
Well, we don't think we committed any crimes. We're not guilty of any crimes, so we're going to fight that case. We are saying that fighting white supremacy is not a crime, and we don't deserve a sentence. Neither do the people over in Hillsborough, they were the two that were convicted for the toppling of Silent Sam. They did not deserve a sentence. They did not deserve a guilty verdict. In that case, they didn't even let the defense present the majority of their argument.
The convictions were 24, 48 hours in jail and a year and a half of probation.
Yeah, we think it's a ridiculous conviction made by a judge who had previously said that MLK deserved to be in prison for 24 hours. When he sentenced someone to 24 hours in prison, he was like, you deserve prison just like MLK did for a night. And I feel like, these judges in particular and police don't realize like the impact prison has on people, even if it is just 24 hours. We were in prison for 5 hours, and it is a very dehumanizing experience. Our criminal injustice system is not geared around reforming people. It's geared around punishing people, punitively punishing people, and what it ends up doing is breaking people and not helping people back into society.
So your argument is not just with the folks that gather it, with a Confederate flag around these monuments and do their own version of protesting. The whole system is corrupt from your end. I'll let you talk for a moment.
Yeah, they're a symptom of a much broader disease of racism, systematic racism in this country. And to focus solely on them would be a huge mistake, because systematic racism is where racism is at its most powerful. That's why there's so many people in prison. That's why the prison population in the U.S. is by far the largest in the world, largest per capita, and much of that is against black people and other people of color.
Of which there's not a lot here at this protest. It's not a big protest, but you didn't get a whole lot of black people participating. Does that bother you?
Well, of course, we want black folks to be involved in activism. We try to center black folks in our activism. This was a press conference. We sort of threw it together. There's so many other things going on at the
Somehow I saw it. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So like the trials in Chapel Hill, of course, are going to detract from this because people are trying to go show up over there. There's the issues around the killing in Apex, the killing here in Raleigh. So a lot of the energy is divided right now, but we wanted to get out a statement to counter sort of what the media narrative is right now, which is basically just putting our mugshots up on the news without providing a ton of context. So we wanted to just hold this press conference now so we could provide context on why we did what we allegedly did.
So what do you want to happen, and how do you get there? Either one of you. I don't want to leave you out. You're farther away.
You want to start on that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, in the short term, we want these Confederate statues down, and we think that Governor Cooper has the authority to take them down because they're a public safety risk. Just back in February, a Holocaust denier was allowed to speak inside the Capitol building, and they were protected by hundreds of RPD officers. They were, I believe the number was they spent more than $30,000. We filed a public records request of money on just trying to surround this building with a ridiculous number of cops. We think it's ridiculous that they hosted Boyd Cathy, a Holocaust denier and white supremacist, in the first place. So those people coming to our city who do not live here, they're sort of the real outside agitators in this situation. They're coming into Raleigh and inciting racist hate, and we're telling Governor Cooper those statues are doing that. They're beacons of hate, bringing white supremacists onto the Capitol grounds, into downtown Raleigh. It's just like back in 1966 when the Ku Klux Klan marched around these monuments in opposition to King speaking at NC State University. So we sort of see those parallels in history, and we're trying to stand against them.
So you'd like to see them down. You want to see them melted down, or a lot of people say, well, let's move them somewhere where they can be and have some context, like a battlefield.
Well, yeah. Well, them being on state capitol grounds is sort of the epitome of celebrating white supremacy. Some of these monuments can't be put in a museum, obviously, like the giant obelisk pillar. I don't think that really can be moved. We do want it removed.
Coral reef,
Yeah.
We've been needing some more artificial reefs to protect the shoreline, so, it could be used for that.
Okay, into the ocean.
Yeah, they definitely don't need to be on Capitol grounds, and we don't think they
want to save some of them.
I don't think they need to be in any public place or public park that people use for the most part. If it's in a museum that properly contextualize it, like I went to Civil Rights Museum in Memphis, Tennessee, where they have Klan hoods and they contextualize them and have statements by racists and by Klansmen, and they actually properly contextualize them around the opposition, which was mostly black voices. What these monuments on public grounds are doing is that they're celebrating white supremacy. It's not really possible to contextualize them fully in the area they're in, and they're ignoring all the black voices from the time when they were put up. Most of these were put up in the teens, when the Ku Klux Klan was at its height in membership, in the 19-teens. And they were there to remind black folks in the city of Raleigh that we're the ones that have the power. We crushed your Reconstruction. White supremacy is here to stay, and we're going to memorialize it in the form of these monuments.
So to get them moved, a few more may be vandalized and torn down, and you probably don't even like the word vandalized, I would guess.
Well, back in 2015, when an activist spray painted Black Lives Matter, that was a contextualization pointing out what the statues aren't overtly saying is that this statue is a celebration of white supremacy, and this is what black folks see, and we're going to write Black Lives Matter. That was the contextualization. Simplifying it as vandalism, I think, is a serious error.
So where I was actually going was it's going to be the state government that's going to take them down ultimately. Yeah, how do we get them to do that?
Well, we're going to keep putting pressure, and we believe that people power is the strongest form of power we have, and we're going to keep organizing around it, and we're going to tell them people power is what brought down the Durham Monument, it's what brought down the Chapel Hill Monument, it's what brought down the Winston-Salem Monument, and it's what's going to happen here in Raleigh, and we're telling them, take them down because they don't belong here, and we believe people power is going to achieve that.
How do you get enough people to show the government that ultimately, it's just voting, who's going to keep their job, who's going to stay in office? How do you get there?
Well, I think probably the thing that we've been trying to focus on is connecting this struggle with all of these various other struggles and trying to make it sort of, these are symbols, right? And we want to fight more than symbols, but symbols are a really good rallying point. So when we fight against these symbols, we can also point out police brutality, police killings, and police murder, which is another facet of a white supremacist system. So we want these white supremacist statues to go, and we want the white supremacist systems to go. And so there's enough people, I hope, in Raleigh that could come around and saying white supremacy is not acceptable in Raleigh, and that is what we're trying to call on people to come and do.
On that note, I would highly recommend, if you have time, offering to interview Miguel DeAndre's uncle. He has a powerful story to tell about what the Durham police and the SBI have done to his family. So,
and to give a brief summary of what happened, if you're not familiar, is DeAndre Ballard was an NC Central student in Durham who was murdered outside his own apartment complex by an armed security guard. The story that the security guard is providing doesn't make any sense. We don't even know who the security guard is. In fact, he's still on duty in Durham. We're not even sure where. So far, the Durham police has said they've completed an investigation, but they haven't released any details about it. On it, no one in the DeAndre's family believes the police. It doesn't make any sense to them. And so we would really recommend that you asked Miguel about that.
Okay, I'm still waiting for the thunderstorm to chase us away, and we're getting lucky so far.
Yeah.
From what you guys were saying in your talk, racism and white supremacy is seated, if not rampant, within the police departments.
Right, and we see that in Charlotte.
Would you say rampant, or would you just say seated is close enough?
I would say rampant. I've witnessed quite a few personally encounters with police, especially with black people, and how police tend to treat black people and queer people and other oppressed people. In the worst cases, it ends in murder, as it did in Keith Mont Scott in 2016, as it ended in Donkhurst Franklin in 2018, 2019, a month ago. And how it ended with DeAndre Ballard in Durham, how it's ended with Soheil in Raleigh. All of these are like warning signs that, yes, police departments are rampant with white supremacy and racism, and to be honest, they always have been. Like Joey had said in our press conference, these same police departments in the South literally evolved from slave patrols. That's where the police in the South originated from. So we shouldn't be surprised when we see that racism is rampant in police departments. I recently saw a USA Today article that had like 80,000 police misconduct cases that were released to the public, which are horrendous, the amount of racist comments police officers would make toward people of color. So yes, I think it is a fair characterization that police departments are rampant with racism.
Raleigh, even Durham?
Even Durham, yes. We see that in with DeAndre Ballard, where they're not investigating his murder. They've passed it on to the SBI, and it doesn't seem like they're doing anything either.
And the People's Republic of Chapel Hill.
Well, we see how UNC police and Chapel Hill police have been treating anti-racist activists, and how they treat white supremacists. They let white supremacists march onto UNC's campus and let them off. Meanwhile, they tackle anti-racist students for doing nothing. Most of the cases that they've charged students with have ended in dropping the charges or not guilty verdicts for the most part. There's one case where a UNC police officer has apparently lied under oath to arrest anti-racists. So yeah, we do believe almost every police department in this country.
It's frustrating you, I can
and
tell.
everyone that we've had experience with, and we can provide some information on. We have experienced racism and seen racism.
Sorry, I actually gotta sit down. I've got a bad back.
We're getting the rain, and the camera won't stand that too well. So thank you very much for talking to me, and maybe we can do some more of this under better conditions.
Yeah. Well, it was nice to meet you.
Thanks.
You have a good one.
All right, and then the sky opened up, and it started to pour. I stashed everything in the car as fast as I could. Fortunately, I had parked in a spot right next to where they were holding the press conference. One of those metered spots that they have downtown that you have to go someplace and, I don't know, put money in or log in or something. Maybe an app. Don't know. Haven't done that. But I was late. I couldn't figure out how to do it. But I still didn't get a ticket. So, yay. And I would have gotten away almost all dry, except as I was tossing stuff in the car and it was starting to pelt on down. This guy pulled up in the street behind my car, rolled his window down and said, "How do I get to the Marble Kids Museum?" All I could tell him was that it was just the other side of town. And in that short period of time, I was drenched. So I guess, like payback for the parking spot and no ticket. So, fair enough. So thank you, Enzo and Jody. These guys are why I call myself a wannabe activist. There we go. Antique activist wannabe. They have done their homework. They are committed to their cause, to their causes. And I haven't researched everything that they rattled off so easily. I did try to ground them in some specific action, short of revolution, how we're going to get things done through our existing forms of government, marches and rallies and acts of civil disobedience like pulling down Silent Sam and the Confederate Soldiers Monument. Those are things that will focus and refocus our attention on those issues for a day or two. And then we'll go pay attention to one of the other big stories of the day. Or some of us will do our best to ignore all of it and try to go on with our lives. Okay, of course, sooner or later, it's all going to come down to an election. We'll pick a mayor, a state legislator, a congressional representative, a senator, a president. And getting something done is really going to be in their hands. Well, again, short of actual revolution. Okay, are you ready for your attention to shift again? Because I'm going to do that. Just hang on, I'm doing the technical director part of the job for a moment here. For the past couple of weeks, the State House and the State Senate both passed a bill called the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. That bill would supposedly require doctors who perform an abortion that somehow resulted in a live birth to provide life-saving care and transport to a hospital for the new infant, and it would make it a felony to kill it. The bill would also require other medical staff to report if a doctor failed to carry out that requirement, so make him a snitch. We talked about that in the last episode that was called Edge Case of an Edge Case. And I called it that because these born alive births, they don't happen. Well, not the way the bill's anti-abortion supporters want you to think that they do. They call them botched abortions. But there are no simple elective abortions at that stage where a fetus might be able to live on its own. Women who have become pregnant, have been pregnant for that long, don't just finally decide that they're tired of it and want to end it. Well, they may be tired of it. I hear that all the time. But to end it with an abortion at that point? Yeah. What's happening is in those late-term abortions is that the fetus or the mother or both are in distress. It's a health emergency, a birth defect, a deformity that puts the child or the mother or both at risk. And so the mother and the doctor decide on an abortion. The fetus may be alive when it's delivered. As Governor from Virginia Governor and pediatric specialist Ralph Northam described it, then the mother and the doctor decide what to do. It's the same decision about heroic measures to save any life at any age, or not to save that life. Now, a competent adult can weigh in on the decision. An adult who is unconscious or suffering from advanced dementia, well, that adult may have left instructions about heroic measures, and many people have rejected them. They've left instructions that say no heroic measures if I'm that far gone. A fetus or a child born with severe birth defects doesn't have that option. So it's up to, well, okay, that's the crux of the debate. The anti-abortion supporters of the Born Alive bill, well, they say they want it to be up to them. Opponents say it should be up to the mother and the doctor. North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper vetoed that bill pretty quickly. His reasoning, and that of many of the opponents in the legislature, is that it's already illegal to kill a live child just because the mother doesn't want it. This week, the Senate voted to override the governor's veto, and I was there with my camera to record the debate and the vote. It wasn't a long debate. This bill has been argued in committee when it was proposed. It was argued in the full chambers when it was passed last month. And so there's just a little back and forth here, but I still want to give you the opportunity to see how the sausage is made in the legislature. So again, feel free to use that fast forward button. And before we do that, let's do a little civics. We saw the House chamber in the...
And civil disobedience has a really large part in
this is bad.
Especially in the South.
I'm rolling the video, and we're getting the sound from...
legislators don't listen to anything else.
The sound from a previous episode. So now I may be in trouble on this one. Let's see what happens.
As a result of
what do you expect to happen? Oh, yeah.
What had happened
at the legislative building.
We had to...
Okay, I don't know what happened. So I am going to have to pull the plug on recording this episode and go fix the thing, and I will come back with an addendum, and we'll play the stuff from the Senate chamber. I should have checked it before I went to play it. I was having some technical trouble. I was running late. All right, so stand by. It's going to take a little while. It's going to take, for those of you who are watching live, which is nobody, it's going to take probably about an hour. So I'm going to go fix that and do a part 2 of the Triangle Talk Show, episode 58, Boyz and the Hoodz. We'll be back. Over, but not out.